Hello, welcome back to Aetheral Space 13.15, The Bells Part 1. We are back.
Hi guys, it's Aetheral Space time.
Hey.
Who's ready to get Aetheral Space done?
I'm going to Aetheral you right now.
Heartbeat
Teleport
shotgun!
to Aetheral Space.
By the way, I've succeeded in cultural victory at my office and in my friends' groups. So, I haven't gotten anyone in my real life that I know to read Aetheral Space. I've genuinely tried, it's not happening. But, I have gotten many people to start saying Heartbeat Shotgun as like the fuck you response. Yeah, so something's happening at least. Like the other day, my friend, who's no relation that I hang out with, was just like, we were talking, and I said some stupid shit, and he was like, Heartbeat Shotgun. And I was like, oh my god, it's complete. I did it. So, cultural victory, we take those.
Thank God.
Thank God.
I was going to say thank you, but I switched to say thank God.
All praise to ye, Christian Tanoni.
I almost like encouraged pride before I remembered the commandments.
Alright, let's read the bells. The wedding of a supreme was usually a grand thing indeed, but this was altogether a more muted affair. This one had never cared much for pomp and circumstance, after all. He and his bride had secluded themselves away from the galaxy, found a quiet planet, and said their vows before only their closest friends. But still there were bells. They told. Doom. Bride and groom laughed as confetti rained down. You would never know from their humble attire that they ruled the supremacy, that this man was the strongest, the one closest to God. Doom. Drinks on the grass, a drink spilt, red wine falling on white fabric, no horror at the ruined dress, no sadness, just gentle laughter, as if nothing at all could ruin this day. Doom. His blood boiled. Doom. Plans made, heretical intentions behind closed doors. He lingered in the hallway, listening in, eavesdropping as man and wife discussed the unthinkable, a world he could not abide. Doom. His blood boiled. Doom! The body so slight, broken on the floor before him, his hands stained in blood, his eyes wide, absurd tears flowing freely, guards wrestling him to the ground. The woman had been vanquished in an instant, but now would always be victorious. Doom! His blood boiled. Doom! Ice spreading over his vision, his limbs stiffening, his thoughts grinding to a halt. The last thing he sees before he is thrown into the future is the face of the man he called friend, the man he called brother, the man he betrayed and was betrayed by. The last growl crawls from his lips. Demon! Doom! Before the dark claims him, the man closest to God speaks. His lips move, to be sure, but the thing that leaves his mouth makes no sense at all. Doom. I hope you wake in a kinder world than this. Doom. His heart froze. Doom. Mariloco snapped back to the present as he ducked underneath a kick from his opponent. As he moved his dodges like a dance, he did his best to keep his afflicted arm at a distance. Vividly colored flowers still protruded from the skin of the limb, blood dripping from their stems, the enemy's ability without a doubt. The growth of the flowers seemed to have stopped, but he couldn't risk the infection, if it was an infection, spreading to the rest of his body. As if the physical damage wasn't bad enough, he could barely muster any aether in the arm that had been infested. Some kind of drainage. Hanami? Unchained. Mariloco created a zone of redirected gravity around his body, pulling himself up into the air. Unchained! With that distance created, he creates another zone, but this one had gravity all but completely nullified. Unshackled by the laws of physics, he observed his enemy from above. Enemy did much the same, a dark smirk on his lips. From the way this blue guy had been talking, it seemed like his ability had something to do with playing games. If he posed a challenge and Mariloco lost, he'd be attacked by more of those flowers. Growth had been instantaneous, so it didn't seem to be something he could dodge. While the flowers themselves weren't that damaging, his reduced aether would make him an easier target for physical attacks. If he got careless, he could very well end up broken on the floor. The blue bastard didn't move to pursue Mariloco. He just continued to watch from below, that irritating smirk on his face. He was doing his best to keep still. That made sense. The guy had said that the next person to breathe was the loser. Since he was doing his best not to breathe, that meant he was vulnerable to his own ability too. It was the trade-off for that unavoidable attack. Mariloco could use that! He didn't have long to do it, though. Breathing, beyond even eating and drinking, was the most basic and vital instinct for an animal. If you didn't breathe, you died. It was as simple as that. To consciously suppress that instinct went against the very rules of Mariloco's flesh. Even with Aster bolstering his body, he could only go for so long without breathing. If he was smart, right, what he would do is he would find the loophole. Or Teal'c would. Which is you record the air around you and then manifest it in your lungs, right? Does that count as breathing?
I think it would count as breathing, to be honest. You're taking oxygen.
But you're not doing it manually. It's manifesting. The oxygen's already in there.
It depends on how you define what breathing is.
True.
I guess would define it as the intake of oxygen. So just because it didn't go through your throat or whatever.
Okay. What if I used my Aether to bolster my ATP production so it doesn't need as much oxygen?
Well,
so I could breathe, hold my breath longer.
But you would need to know that in advance. By the time he says it, you did not know you had to do that.
I agree with you, but I'm just saying, like, I like this because I see like the JoJo fuck you logics around it, where it's like you see
what game he was going to do in advance, probably. But
the guy had said that the next person, he didn't have long to do it though. Blah blah blah. Even with Aster bolstering a body. Okay, but that was enough. Unchained! Mariloco forced himself back down onto the ground, a crater forming in the floor from the sheer force of the impact. The moment he landed, he thrust his palm forward towards his opponent, not to attack directly, but to target. It didn't matter if this bastard didn't want to breathe. He could control his own body, but he couldn't control the air! Air, pulled like gravity, rushed towards the enemy's mouth and passed through his lips. A single breath had been forced upon him. Mariloco smirked, taking a greedy gasp of oxygen. And flowers burst out of his other arm. Oh, because he's the one that made the breathing happen? The pain, much worse than the first time, sent him down to one knee for a moment, his face contorted in agony. As he heard his opponent laugh mockingly, however, that agony was quickly converted into anger. He looked up with bloodshot eyes. Oh, apologies. The enemy grinned, 2 hands on his hips. It seems perhaps you've misunderstood my physiology. No? He opened his jaw and kept opening it, until Mariloco could see all the way down his throat. Right at the back, like some kind of airlock, was a secondary jaw, teeth flat and fixed like those of a horse, preventing any oxygen from getting to his lungs. Damn skirts. It's airtight!
Yeah.
It is perfectly airtight!
It is, yeah.
Alright. I'll allow it.
It's not a natural thing.
As he rose to his feet, Mariloco went to bite at the flowers infesting his arm, but his teeth passed right through them. Oh, it's like JoJo flowers. Seemed they weren't completely physical objects, then. More of a representation of the effect? Who gave a crap? The important thing was beating him. Was beating them. Mariloco allowed his Aether to course around his body, testing it. The results were not promising. It was at about half its usual potency. If he kept getting hit by this ability, he'd be dead quickly. No more mistakes could be made. He took a deep breath, adjusted his footing, and deep within his mind recalibrated itself. To become a murder machine. Popcorn.
Teal'c hummed to himself as he circled his opponents, the caveman Mariloco, a spring in his step as he enjoyed the advantage. How to finish you then, mon ami? Teal'c enjoyed games, he always had. From simple playground fare to complex battles of strategies and wit, he loved them all. When you got down to it too, life was nothing but a game. Rules were imposed constantly by forces unchallengeable, creating walls of the great labyrinth that all men must wander through. In that sense, Garden Macabre was the perfect representation of life itself. To use it, Teal'c needed to do only one thing, propose a game between himself and his opponents. It had to be a game he himself could conceivably lose, and he couldn't use the same game type again until some time had passed. Apart from that, though, he was free as a bird. Each demerit his opponent suffered would reduce his strength considerably. After 2 more or so, Teal'c would feel comfortable launching a more direct attack. These 4 arms of his weren't just for dancing, after all. Well, there was no time like the present, if Mariloco would let him get a word in. The caveman clearly understood Teal'c's ability now. He was rushing in, hoping to stop him from getting the words out. A simple but effective strategy. With his arms infested, Mariloco resorted to his legs, launching a kick that would have surely broken a lesser man in half. Teal'c raised all 4 of his arms and blocked, the fist slamming against his impromptu fortress of flesh. Teal'c considered it.
Hollow wicker basket.
Invader from days past, oh clashes against future at last. What victory unaligned, or were he already mine? Teal'c Jade.
Too bad Aetheral Space is canonically a pigeon language, so it doesn't rhyme.
It does. Just whatever he says, it rhymes in his language.
He's spitting.
Once a poet had been foolish enough to tell Teelin that his work was amateur at best, Teelin had forced him to eat his own arms in response. Perhaps he'd explore that conclusion for this battle as well. As Meriloko kicked again, this time aiming for the eyes, coating Teelin's muscles, he kicked off the ground. He launched off the ground, flipping through the majestic.
Kicking wasn't enough to describe.
Well, I just said kicking a second ago.
Oh, you've learned! He's so strong now.
Trebel, he laughed, eyes on the foliage covering Mariloko's arms. Let's see if we can enhance you further, shall we? Whoever can slap the most in the clap the most in the next 10 seconds wins.
Slap, slap, slap,
How
clap, clap.
No dignity.
It's just gonna be a fucking if this was an anime, this is a montage of, like, the Toto claps from both of them, trying to keep up.
Meriloko moved quickly, the little purple African muster struggling across his arms as he clapped and clapped and clapped, even weakened as clapping was fast enough that it couldn't be seen with the naked eye. As he landed, Teelin went to clap as well, but before his his pairs of hands could meet, they were suddenly repelled from each other by an invisible force. He smiled. That was the way Meriloko liked to play then, eh? It was obvious that this brute had some sort of gravity manipulation. He'd created an area of repulsion between Teelin's hands to prevent him from clapping at all. Now he was getting it, but he hadn't gone nearly far enough with his cheating. Joints snapped as Teelin twisted his arms around in their sockets, such that they were now facing behind him instead. His hands were now in a position where Meriloko could not see. If he couldn't see them, he couldn't interfere with them. Teelin applauded his own genius without reservation. Needless to say, he won. This was what he lived for. Not just playing games, but winning them, humiliating his opponents, showing them they were nothing but pieces on his board. He'd played such games many times. Sometimes he played with families. Other times he drove friends to betrayal and depravity. Once he'd even managed to form a cult of personality, filling their minds with whatever he pleased until he grew bored of them. The universe had no shortage of toys to offer. The shape of the board itself was the only thing that changed, and now Teelin had his eye on the entire supremacy of his board. What kind of games could he play with an entire empire? He shuddered to imagine. For the moment, though, he just snapped his arms back into position and regarded his victory with a calm smile. Meriloko fell to one knee again as flowers burst out from his leg, blood splattering out and painting the floor. Still smiling, Teelin stepped back and sat down on one of the floating pieces of concrete, crossing his legs. It seemed a shame that he hadn't used the environment at all during the fight, but these things happened. For our final game of the night, Teelin laughed, who can beg the other for mercy first? Whoever hears the other plead for mercy first loses. Popcorn.
Did this fool think that Meriloko's pride was a chain? To him, anything could be discarded if it resulted in victory. He would debase himself in whatever way was necessary to defeat his enemy. He would crawl through the mud as long and as far as it took to reach his goal. If he could destroy his opponent by shitting himself, he would shit without hesitation. I love that you're full-on channeling Araki, and I love it so much. Like, no, this isn't Araki, this is Tanhoney. This is Tanhoney at his limits. He's limit breaking his Oni. It didn't even take a moment to answer the fool's challenge. Please, Meriloko said, his voice a dull monotone. Have pity. This time there was no mistake. Meriloko had spoken first, and he had spoken correctly. He had... there we go. This time there was no mistake. Meriloko had spoken first, and he had spoken correctly. He had, have mercy upon me, the enemy said, his voice strangely slurred. Blood burst out of Meriloko's remaining legs as flowers burrowed out of his flesh like worms, opening their petals against the night. Immediately he collapsed to his knees, but he did not reach the ground. Instead, with blinding speed, the enemy rushed forward and seized Meriloko by the neck with one of his massive hands, holding him on high. This wasn't ideal. All of Meriloko's limbs were covered now, and save for the very tips of his fingers and toes, he couldn't channel any aether through them at all. He was almost helpless. All he could do was watch as that massive blue face leered at him. I'm afraid I've had numerous adjustments made to my body, the enemy purred. There's a former absurd weapons lab man who is only too happy to indulge my requests. My senses, for one, are manual. I can switch them on and off as I please. Doom! He grinned with both sets of teeth, within and without. Doom! Now, he leered, I hope you enjoyed your dawn contest, fossil, but I'm afraid it's come to an end. But I must say, you've made a very amusing toy. Doom! Merci. Doom! Meriloko lunged forwards. Ooh-wee!
Ooh.
Talk about an Aether!
That's a real Aetheral Space.
Well, thank you for the chapter, Honey. Thank you for the bells, part 1. Let me see if we have any questions. Sorry, that took a lot out of my throat. I gotta remember to stop doing the raspy voice, but I thought it would fit. I wanted to be a hero.
You were. You're my hero.
Aw, you're my academia.
Well, if you're my hero, then I guess... Shikara be like, if you're a hero, Izuku, then I guess I'm the academia.
True.
He's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Wiser asks, are the names of Supreme's techniques public but not necessarily common knowledge?
It depends on the Supreme. Some of them will be more tight-lipped about it. Like Damon Delish, for example, he had a very general ability and he used it a lot, so everyone knew about Quantum King.
Okay. And then he had his secret Quantum Emperor. It allows me to phase through anything by manipulating quantum tunneling between particles. You wouldn't get it! Wiser asks, okay, never mind. That's not a question. They're just answering land. Quaker asks, can Panacea's spoiler go bad? Is there anything else that can make it unusable? I kind of answered this because I thought I remembered the answer, which is you said it doesn't go bad, but it can shrivel up if not properly stored and enter in an active state.
Effects, so yeah.
Alright, and how Quaker also asks, how does Panacea have to be stored to keep it fresh/usable?
Well, if it's separated from sort of the main mass, you want to keep it cold, basically, because once it's separated, for example, from one of the big sources of it that they cultivate, that's when it starts going inert, basically.
Ooh,
So that's why they keep it in like canisters and stuff.
Alright, well thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.